Okay, good evening, everybody. It looks like we are live. We're starting a little bit late here, about 10 minutes late, so I apologize for the delay. There's really not a lot of different things to talk about this week compared to what we talked about last week. So, if you missed last week's episode, this might be interesting. And if you tuned into last week, we'll try to change some of the discussion up enough so it doesn't feel like a repeat of last week. But there's a couple of new news articles in the area of technology. For those that are new, I forgot to even start with the intro. This is episode 150 of Tech Thursdays, the weekly live stream show that I do every single Thursday, or at least attempt to. We only missed one. So far this year, I missed one episode, which was like 2 weeks ago. Yeah. So we had last week, and then the week before we did not have an episode. But anyway, what we discuss on this channel, and particularly on Tech Thursdays, is all things related to PC DIY. So if you're building a computer, a custom PC, for whatever the use case is, whether it's gaming or content creation or whatever, you're running a home server, home lab, this is what we focus on. So recently, if you've been in the market for upgrading to a newer PC, you've probably become aware of the memory price increases and how that's affected a lot of things in the industry, not just building a computer or a custom PC, but also a lot of other things like the consoles, for example, and laptops and other things. Anything that's got memory has gotten more expensive or less readily available. And it's unfortunate. It's kind of like a repeat of 2021, but it's different in the sense that the last time we had a issue like this, it was due to supply availability. Well, this is still supply availability, but last time the problem was due to lead times. A big gap in the lead times led to a delay in manufacturing, and that caused a backlog, and that's what caused things to become disrupted in terms of the industry. This time around, it's a lack of availability. So it's not so much a lead time problem, it is an availability, part availability, and now also material availability. So the first article that I'm showing here, global helium shortage and high oil prices will eventually push the Nintendo Switch 2 price up, according to former sales lead. So I guess just like with the PlayStation recently, the PlayStation prices have gone up. The Switch 2 is probably going to go up. This whole serves kind of a different demographic. I feel like the people that game on the Switch and the Switch 2 are slightly different type of gamers compared to the ones who game on PC or on the PlayStation 5 or maybe the Xbox Series X, although you don't really hear that much about Xbox Series X these days. But it looks like we could be in for a slight change in the availability for things like RAM. So there are some articles circulating about companies like OpenAI and how they placed intent to purchase orders, but not actual purchase orders back in November or October of last year. And that could lead to a rebound where there is more availability of memory, because if OpenAI and I assume other AI companies, if they don't need as much RAM or they start scaling back the amount of hardware orders, then that can create a problem for the manufacturers. Now, the biggest problem that I can see with this is the production lines from the memory manufacturers. So there's three of them, if you didn't know: Micron, Samsung, and SK Hynix. If they have shifted over a lot of their production to HBM production, and all of a sudden now there's an excess of HBM, that's going to create a problem, because now there's still a lack of supply for DDR5 globally, and to a much lesser extent DDR4. Although DDR4 is supposed to be on the way out, but DDR4 got a second lifeline because there's demand for DDR4 again, magically, because of all this stuff that's happening with the AI industry. So it's an interesting thing to observe from the sidelines. And at this point, the only thing we can do is really just ride out this wave. That's literally the only thing you can do. Either just don't buy any computer hardware because the memory prices are so high and just wait it out, or look to upgrade something else that is adjacent to the actual PC. So look at upgrading your monitor, look at upgrading, I don't know, a keyboard or a mouse or a peripheral or something else, maybe the computer case, maybe the liquid cooling system, whatever it may be. There are alternative things that you can do besides upgrading the core components. Now, obviously, if somebody is on a 5-year-old or a 7-year-old computer, then they desperately need to upgrade depending on what they're doing with their computer. So I can totally understand the desire to upgrade, even despite the market we're in where nothing is really affordable right now, except, I guess, computer cases. Computer cases, the price on computer cases have not really gone up, but those don't have memory chips in them. So they don't have embedded circuits. Now, some of them might have fan controllers, but you know they don't have a bunch of DDR5 or HBM in them, so they're relatively easy to get. But all this stuff about helium and then oil, and you know now we're talking like raw materials. Raw materials, yes. Okay, if it wasn't bad enough with the memory, the actual chips, now we got raw material shortages. Yeah, it just keeps getting better and better. But the thing is, I've heard that the price of DDR5 has kind of stabilized a little bit. And I have been checking it weekly, and it hasn't really gone above the high price point that I saw last month. So it's kind of flatlined. But that doesn't mean it's going to go back down overnight. You know, it took, what, 6 months to ride the wave up? It's probably going to take 6 months to go back down, or it might just sit at the price that it's at for several weeks or months and then slowly start trending back down. So if you're in the market for a PC, you're probably going to be waiting until the next upgrade cycle. If you need to do a full new build, or you are looking to do a full new build, which would include having to purchase a DDR5 memory, because now is not a good time to be buying DDR5 memory. So, okay, we looked at this article. You're kind of laughing at Micron because they staked everything there at 40% on that 40% RAM. 40% RAM? What did they do? Didn't all of the companies do the same thing? Max Sun has an Intel Arc Pro B60 dual 48 gig turbo graphics card, hands-on impressions. You know, there's a bunch of like April 1st articles. I'm going to try to skip over a lot of the April 1st articles because I can't tell which ones are April Fool's jokes. I mean, some of them, the headlines might be so obvious, but I'm just going to skip a lot of the April 1st articles. Micron eliminated its consumer memory storage brand. Yeah, they're direct sales. They're direct sales, but they haven't stopped selling in the consumer market. They just sell through like a Corsair or someone else. They still sell to the consumer market. They just don't sell directly. Micron killed off Crucial, but the others didn't really have. Okay, I guess Samsung has direct to consumer. SK Hynix doesn't have a very big direct to consumer business. Like, are you able to buy SK Hynix memory that literally has SK Hynix logo and heat spreaders on it? I'm not aware of any, at least not outside of Korea. So you'll still end up buying Micron whether you know it or not. Like it's not like it's gonna go away. You're gonna end up buying a Corsair. Anyone who buys Corsair is probably gonna end up with Micron at some point. Or if you buy what was the other one? Not Patriot. Corsair. Corsair uses Micron. I mean, my only pair of of DDR5 that I have that's Corsair branded is Micron based RAM. So it's not like they're going away. And then I'm pretty sure the NAND flash in a bunch of SSDs are probably potentially also going to have Micron flash in them. So I don't know who Micro Center uses, like Micro Center Inland, for example. I wouldn't be surprised if Micron is the source for the NAND flash for Micro Center's SSDs, the Inland SSDs, and I'll still be buying those. So it's not like I'm gonna not be buying Micron. I'll end up with Micron hardware in the future, regardless of what all happens here. You avoid Corsairs, you don't want to. Yeah, you don't. Okay. I mean, I have a bunch of. I'm literally using a Corsair keyboard right now, the K95, and I don't have the Corsair iQ software installed. But yeah, I don't use any of the third-party software, so it's one of those things. Like, I'll still end up. What I'm saying is, you may not even realize it, but you might end up buying an SSD or something at some point, and it's got a third-party brand, and it ends up with Micron NAND flash as a supplier. So Kingston's another one. Yeah, Kingston uses Micron. Kingston, Corsair. I want to say Western Digital? Western Digital is either using them or they're using Hitachi or somebody. I forgot. Yeah, my Corsair RAM is all Micron. A lot of my DDR3, most of my DDR3 back in the day is all Micron. I've got, I don't know if I have any, I don't think I have any DDR4 that's Micron based. I know I have DDR5 and DDR3 that's Micron based. But yeah, they'll still be around. You know, I've got Crucial Ballistics DDR3. I've got some other DDR3 that's probably Micron that I think is, man, what was the name of the company? Do you guys remember OCZ? Does anybody remember OCZ? I don't know who they use. OCZ back in the day, they're probably sourcing from Samsung or somebody, or it could be multiple. But I remember I had an OCZ DDR3. I have AMD, AMP, Radeon series memory, DDR3, 1866. I don't know who AMD was using. It's the AMD RAM, might be Micron for all I know. And that was like my best DDR3 kit, the Radeon memory. And then I've got Intel Extreme Masters. Intel Extreme Masters is Micron. Yeah, that one was definitely Micron. And then that was a Patriot one, I think. So that's probably Micron. Yeah, just because Crucial's gone. And you know the crazy thing is, the more I think about Micron, the more I realize I think the vast majority of all of my SSDs are probably Micron. First place is probably Micron. Second place is either Micro Center Inland, which is most likely also Micron, or Samsung might be third. Samsung's either second or third for me. All of my early SSDs, you know, like my old SATA SSDs from like 10 years ago, those are all Samsung. But all my modern NVMe SSDs, they're all Micron. Almost all of them. You know, like this one right here, for example, the Crucial T700, my Gen 5. All my Gen 5, I only have like 2 Gen 5 SSDs, but both of them are Micron based. One is a Crucial, so it's obviously Micron, and the other one was the world's first one, which was the Micro Center, the TD500, and that one is also Micron. So, yeah, it's like, I would say, I probably have to do inventory one of these days just to find out, like, how much of my flash storage is Micron. I can pretty much guarantee that Micron is at least 60% of all of my SSDs. Out of all the SSDs that I've collected over the years, Micron's 60%. And then second is probably Micro Center's Inland brand, which is also Micron. So if you combine the two of them, Micron is probably 80 85% of all of my SSD flash storage is all Micron. The remainder is probably like the remaining, what is that, like 15% is like Samsung, or maybe 12% Samsung and 3% SK Hynix, or whoever the other person is. That, because I know I have like a Lexar, which I think is the Lexar SSD that I bought last year is either Micron or SK Hynix. Oh, but you know, there's another one actually. I just realized Kioxia. Kioxia. That's the Japanese one. I have a Kioxia in my laptop, but I don't have a lot of those. So yeah, most of it's definitely gonna be Micron. Second, Samsung, and probably third place is Kioxia or SK Hynix. Half of your 10 NVMEs are crucials. Well, there's an easy way to tell when it comes to memory. I've kind of already shown people how to tell if their memory is from Micron or not. Or, well, not, okay. It's hard to tell Micron from Samsung. It's easy to tell SK Hynix. SK Hynix is the easiest one to determine if you have SK Hynix. You just look at the numbers, the primary timings. So for example, if we have a 48 gigabyte DDR5 8000 with primary timings of 40, 48, I don't remember what the last number is, 131 or 128 or something. So if it's something like this, 1.35 volts, this basically, okay, let's give some examples. I'll give you some examples. 32, these are memory kits that I actually have. DDR5, 6000, and it is 36, 36, 36, and I don't remember what the last number is, but it's kind of irrelevant. I forgot. At one point, what was the voltage? 1.3 volts? 1.3 volts. 32 gigabyte DDR5 6000, 32, 30, 36, I think. 30, 32, 36, 36. I don't remember. It's irrelevant. At 1.35, I think. So it's, okay, here's some examples. Here's another one. 96 gigabyte DDR5 6400, 32, 36, 36. I don't remember what the last number is. I can probably find out. CPU-Z. CPU-Z. Oh, I was way off. It's not. Yeah, it's not 36. It's 39. 96 gigabyte DDR5 6400, 32, 39, 39, 102. 1.35 volts. So these are some, let's do one more. I'll do one more example. 64 gigabyte DDR5 5200, 40, 77, 1.25, what is it, 1.2? 1.25 volts, I believe. And there's one more. Let's do, let's do one more for completion. 64 gigabyte DDR5 5600. These are all my memory kits, by the way. I'm happy to remember what all of them are. Okay, this one's 36 or 34 or something. It doesn't really matter. At 1.25. Okay. So these are the memory kits that I have. This was the very first memory kit that I got. This is a free memory kit from Micro Center for a bundle. This is another free Micro Center special. My 32 gig kits are both free Micro Center specials. These are the ones that I actually spent money on. Although I guess technically you buy a bundle, so you can kind of say it's in there, but it's technically free but you bought something. So anyway, so this one I can tell. Okay, there's a method that I use that it's not 100% guaranteed, but it is very accurate. It is probably 85% accuracy in terms of whether I can tell if a memory kit is from a certain brand, and that brand is called SK Hynix. SK Hynix is the easiest one to look at a memory kit and immediately determine if it is from Micron if it's from SK Hynix or if it's not from SK Hynix. So the question is the memory kit from SK Hynix or not? Notice that I said or not. I didn't say or is it from Micron or Samsung. No, because it's very hard to tell, if not nearly impossible, to tell the difference between Samsung and Micron. So we are going to do a little quiz here to see because I know there's people who watched my live streams before and probably already know the method that we're about to use to determine the manufacturer of all 6 of these memory kits. So the first memory kit, we're going to do this one first. So you guys in the chat, who can tell me who is the manufacturer of this kit? By the way, this is I don't even need to tell the brand. I guess I can tell you the brand. If those who watch my streams probably already know, I'll tell you the brand. This is called G-Skill. G-Skill. Trident. Z5. This first one, DDR5 8000. XMP. This is my magic memory. So, there is an Expo equivalent of this, but the one that I have is the XMP. So Mark says it's SK Hynix. So Mark is saying SK Hynix. Does anyone disagree? Because remember, the question is it SK Hynix or not? So this one right here, G-Skill Trident Z5, DDR5 8048 gigs, that's 2 times 24. 1.35 volts. This is my favorite memory. So, okay. So, who here believes this is SK Hynix? The correct answer is, I'm going to reveal it, SK Hynix. This is SK Hynix memory. That is the correct answer. Mark is absolutely correct. This is SK Hynix memory. All right, moving on to the next one. Number 2, this guy down here. Who is this? Who made this? Free memory from Micro Center. If you bought an AMD bundle, so this was free with the Ryzen 9 7950X bundle from the year 2022. Thomas says Samsung. Mark says Micron. So remember what the question was, is it SK Hynix or not? You guys are basically tending toward it being a not, but you're giving me an actual answer outside of what I was asking, but that's fine. So we have someone saying Samsung, someone saying Micron. This is where it gets really interesting. Okay, so anyone else? Thomas says not Hynix. Okay, so the correct answer is not SK Hynix. This is not SK Hynix memory. It is definitely not SK Hynix memory. Does anybody want to take a guess at... This is where it's like, who knows, right? I know the answer, but do you guys know the answer? Who actually made this memory? We know that it's not SK Hynix, so who made this memory kit? G-Skill Flare X5. This is G-Skill Flare X5. With Expo DDR5 6000. So who is the manufacturer of this second kit? Offered in a bundle in the early days of Zen 4. No one... The crazy thing is, this is such a coin toss, but I will tell you who the correct answer... Well, like the secret answer. This is none other than Samsung. Samsung memory. This is Samsung DDR5. CL363636 1.3 volts. DDR5 6000. So that is the correct answer. Well, that is kind of like the correct answer is it's not SK Hynix. But like I said, it is a huge gamble because someone could have said Micron and they might have been right. But in this case, this is absolutely Samsung memory. Okay, next one. Next one. This one down here. This is a newer Micro Center free special bundle. G-Skill Flare X5. Another G-Skill Flare X5. This is a newer G-Skill Flare X5 that is offered with Zen 5 CPUs at Micro Center. This is a newer bundle. The old bundle that we just went over was from the Zen 4 launch, although I will say that this newer bundle was also available with Zen 4 bundles. So which one do you guys think makes this G-Skill Flare X5? 32 gigabytes DDR5 6000 CL323636 1.35 volts. Oh man, there's a lot of different ones on this one. Okay. The correct answer. Oh man, this is the one that's... This is it. The correct answer is SK Hynix. This is SK Hynix memory. Free memory from Micro Center. SK Hynix DDR5 6000. This is actually very good memory to include in a bundle. So this is SK Hynix. This was available starting around the middle of... It was like middle or late 2023. 2023 was when Micro Center switched suppliers from Samsung-based... Well, actually, G-Skill changed suppliers. G-Skill switched over from Samsung to Hynix because Samsung had a very high return rate because a lot of this memory, this first earlier Flare X, was having trouble running reliably at the Expo speed of 6000 because the Samsung memory ran really hot at 1.3 volts, causing it to basically cause instability or something. So yeah, they basically swap. I had the whole conversation for like 45 minutes with a Micro Center employee talking about this, so I know all the details on this. So this is definitely SK Hynix. So a lot of people got this one wrong, which means a lot of people don't know my method, because I've already taught a method how to eyeball it and immediately know the answer. So anyway, let's move on to the next one. So this next one, this is my big memory. This is what I call big memory. This is my fast memory. This one's my big memory. So 96 gigabytes. This is 2x48, but it could also be 4x24 if you want to run 4 sticks of RAM. So currently, I have two ways of doing this memory kit. I can either do 4 times 24 or 2 times 48 to achieve the exact same result, exact same timings, everything's the same, voltage is the same, DDR5 6400. So who makes this memory kit? And this memory kit is known as G-Skill Trident Z5, and it can either be Z5 or Z5 Neo. It can be either one. Thomas says Hynix. Mark is saying Hynix. So people are saying Hynix. Okay. Now, I'm wondering if people are saying Hynix because they know that this is the memory that I'm literally streaming on right now, or if they actually know the method. But the correct answer is, because this is literally what we're using on the PC right now with the Godlike. We're running 4 sticks of 24. This is SK Hynix. This is SK Hynix. Okay, next one. So now we're moving on to a 64 gigabyte kit. I don't do a lot of 64 gigabyte on DDR5. When I think of 64 gigabytes, I think of DDR4. I ran a lot of computers at 64 gig capacity, DDR4 3200 back in the day. Most of my DDR5 based systems are going to either be 48 gigabytes or 96 gigabytes. So I aim for 2x24 or 4x24 or 2x48. And in the current market that we live in right now, it is more cost effective to start with 2x24 and then later down the line upgrade, double up to 4x24, basically buy the same kit again later or whatever, and double up to 96. So that's kind of the way to do it, especially in a market that we're in right now where memory is so expensive, especially the high density capacity like a 48 gigabyte DIMM, for example, or a 96 gigabyte kit. Those are very, very expensive. We're talking like well over $1,000 just for 2 sticks of memory right now. So not cost effective in the slightest. But anyway, okay, so this kit, we haven't really... Okay, so people are saying... Samsung, it looks like Samsung. Okay, so a lot of people are saying Samsung on this one. So this one... So... Did anybody say... So people are saying Samsung, but remember... Okay... That looks so bad, so definitely not high. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the keyword not Hynix. If you guys are saying that it's something other than Hynix. Because the people who are saying it's not Hynix, you would be correct. The people saying... Okay, let's just label this. Well, this is not Hynix. This is absolutely not SK Hynix. But the people that are... Okay, so okay. A bunch of people said Samsung. Which is technically... It's not Hynix, so they're kind of correct. But here's the thing. They're actually wrong. Because this memory kit is none other than Micron. Micron DDR5. Micron is the manufacturer of this memory kit. This memory kit is a Corsair Vengeance DDR5 XMP kit. XMP DDR5 5200 XMP profile. Yes, that's DDR5 5200 via XMP profile. Corsair Vengeance. This is my Corsair memory kit. This is the only Corsair memory kit that I have. So it's a 64 gig. It's 2x32. It's one of the earlier DDR5 kits that I have. That's why it's not that fast. It's still XMP based with these timings. Because someone might look at this and like, that looks like JEDEC. Well, it's not actually JEDEC. It's actually XMP. This is a performance profile. So, anyway. All right, last one. The last one. Down here. What do you guys think this 64 gigabyte DDR5 5600 is? 1.25 volts. And it is 2x32. So it's 2 sticks of 32. With an XMP profile running DDR5 5600. This is XMP DDR5 5600. What do you guys think? Hey, Safi, we're guessing what these memory kits, who's the manufacturer of these memory kits. Mark is saying Hynix. Thomas saying Hynix. Praetor saying Hynix. If you know the method, you'll know the answer. But the correct answer on this one is SK Hynix. This is SK Hynix memory. Definitely SK Hynix memory. In fact, this is, so when I went to Micro Center back at the launch of Zen 4, when I went to Micro Center to get my 7950X, the 7950X Zen 4 flagship back in late September of 2022, I purchased this memory kit. This is a G-Skill Ripjaws S5 with XMP profile. So one of the more interesting ones. So my very first DDR5 kit that I ever purchased was a SK Hynix 64 gigabyte kit with a G-Skill Ripjaws branding with an Intel XMP profile on it, and I was using that with my Ryzen 9 7950X with the Gigabyte X670E Aorus Master. That was my very first DDR5 build. Now I did also get the free memory. They gave me the free. They gave this to me. I didn't use it. I just kind of like, okay, now I have some like debug extra special RAM for whatever. But no, I ended up using this, and that was my very first DDR5 memory kit. That's SK Hynix. So what is the pattern here? There is a pattern to visually look and immediately eyeball if a memory kit is SK Hynix or not. Notice that you can't really tell when it comes to this one, when it comes to the two in the middle. A lot of people were saying it's not Hynix, but they didn't really know what it was besides the fact that it wasn't SK Hynix. It was literally a coin toss of whether it's Samsung or Micron. Over here, we had people saying Micron, and they were wrong. Over here, we had a bunch of people say Samsung, and they were wrong. So it's not easy to tell. There's no actual way to tell between Samsung and Micron, but there's a very easy way to tell if it's SK Hynix, because SK Hynix does something significantly different from the other two. The trick is to look at the primary timings, specifically the first number and the second number. Let's look at this one. 40 and 48. 40 and 48. These two numbers are not equal. Let's look at this other one that is also SK Hynix. 32 and 39. 32 and 39 are not equal to each other. Now let's look at this other one down here, which is also SK Hynix. Free memory via the Micro Center bundle. And it's pretty good memory too. 32, 36. These are not equal. And finally, the last example I have, my very first SK Hynix DDR5 memory kit, my very first DDR5 memory kit, 30, 36. These two numbers are not equal. Now let's look at the examples that are not SK Hynix. Doesn't matter if they're Samsung or Micron. They're just not SK Hynix. So let's look at this first one here. 36 and 36. These two numbers are equal to each other, indicating that they are most likely, this is most likely not an SK Hynix kit. And in fact, it is not. It is Samsung. And then another one, 40 and 40. These two numbers, the first and the second number, are the exact same number, which implies that it is not an SK Hynix kit. Almost every SK Hynix kit that I have ever seen usually has the cast latency number not equal to the second number. There are a few exceptions. There is a memory kit that is an older DDR5 memory kit that someone pointed out to me that it doesn't follow this logic. It has, I think, cast latency 3636, and it just so happened that that was a SK Hynix memory kit. But most of the time, if it's an SK Hynix memory kit, the first number and the second number are not equal. This is the method that I have always used since my very first DDR5 build, that I look at a memory kit and I immediately know it's a SK Hynix kit. Or I look at another memory kit and I immediately know, without anybody telling me, without Googling anything, I immediately know that's not an SK Hynix kit. So it is very easy to determine if it is an SK Hynix kit using this method. But it is not always 100% foolproof to tell that it is not an SK Hynix kit, because there are a few exceptions where some rare memory kits have the two numbers equal to each other and it still ends up being an SK Hynix. There's two examples that I can think of where people have brought that to my attention. But in general, you can, if you're like shopping for DDR5 and you are not sure who the manufacturer is, it could be G-Skill, Corsair, Guile, T4, Team Group, whatever, all of them. You look at it, you eyeball it, all you need to know, what is the list of primary timings? And that will tell you if it's Hynix or not. A die, M die, who cares? M die is the better stuff anyway. So M die is, I don't have any A die. I don't care about A die. I only care about M die. I'll tell you right now, this M die, this M die, this is M die. Well, I don't know about this is M die. This is really old. This is M die. All of these M die, M die, M die, and most likely M die. All of them. So the whole thing about A die, M die, that doesn't really matter. That literally does not matter at the end of the day. If you care about dense memory, like if you're trying to do like big memory, like 96 gigs or more, you will be, if you're on SK Hynix, you will be on M die. There is no such thing as A die with big numbers, like big capacity. That I can tell you for sure. But if you're looking for like some A die for whatever reason, some of the 32 gig kits are gonna be A die, but personally, I don't care about 32 gig. It's dead to me because it's like so puny and it's like minimum spec at that point. So, I mean, that's my opinion on A die versus M die. For me personally, 48 gigs is the lowest amount of memory that I would go with on a brand new build in 2026. I would not touch 32 gigs unless it was given to me for free from some special like Micro Center bundle or something. So I ain't spending any money on 32 gigs of DDR5, especially in this market. So, but that being said, I'm not really going to spend money on 96 gigs of memory in this market either. So 48 gigs seems to be the sweet spot right now if you're trying to save money and you're trying to go with high performance. Yeah, the problem with TRFC, like, okay, that's one thing that you can look at. But that's not really a foolproof method from what I've seen, because you're probably better off looking at voltages, the advertised voltages for the profile, because like what I've seen is typically the lower voltage is going to be M die, the higher voltage SPD is going to be A die, but it doesn't always mean it's A die. If it's higher dense and it's higher voltage, it's still going to end up being M die. So to me, I don't bother with A die, M die. That to me, that's a bunch of noise and a bunch of nonsense. Like, who cares? I want 48 gigs or 96 gigs. And if I can't get A die, if I can't get 96 or 48 at A die, then A die is completely irrelevant to me. So, I mean, I'm making a bunch of opinionated statements that sound really strong statements right now. But think about it this way. If you're going to build a PC, do you want to be at minimum spec, scared of running out of memory? Or do you want to build something that's going to last? So it depends on what you're trying to do with the computer. Because some people don't care. Some people are just trying to overclock for some like world records or some arbitrary reason. Or maybe it's just like it's a hobby. You know, like I overclock just as a hobbyist. But if we're talking practical, like if we're building the computer for the long haul, and we're going to use it for a bunch of things, including gaming, then does A die and M die really matter in the end? Probably not. So the way to tell is like, is it Hynix or not? That's what matters more. That's what really matters more. We gave an example of a really crappy Samsung kit that was terrible. It was so bad, Micro Center had such a high return rate on this free RAM that G.Skill literally switched suppliers over to SK Hynix. That's how bad it was. And it's interesting when you look at these two memory kits, because to the untrained eye, they literally look identical in the store. They have the exact same packaging. They're both called G.Skill Flare X5. So it's G.Skill Flare X5, 5 meaning DDR5, because if it's Flare X, it's DDR4. If it's Flare X5, it's DDR5. So they're both called Flare X5. But one of them is Hynix, and it's way better and reliable, and the other one is the garbage Samsung memory that, yeah, it says DDR5 6000, but you technically got to run it at like DDR5 5600 to get it to work. And without any issues, unless you got lucky and it just somehow works without overheating or thermal throttling. So, there's all kinds of things like that. But yeah, to the untrained eye, I can see a lot of people, not really knowing what the difference is when the difference is so subtle. It's literally looking at two numbers to figure out what the difference is, like who made what. So that is the key. And you look at how Hynix compares with Micron. Typically, Hynix can outperform Micron any day of the week. Look at these. These are both 64 gigabyte. The difference is one is 5600, the other one is 5200. Both of them run at 1.25 volts. But one of them has a much, much lower cast latency, which means it's a lot more responsive and has lower latency, versus the other one that's running at basically JDEC, parading around as an XMP profile. So esports people, I don't know, because I've talked to a couple of professional esports and they don't really bother with stuff like that. It's when people talk about stuff like that, like, oh, tuning for the little 2%, I always think of Trunks from Dragon Ball Z when he told King Cold, the weapon doesn't make the man. Like some really, really pro gamer or whatever is still going to outperform some non-pro gamer in the, you know what I'm saying? I mean, that's my opinion on it, but I mean, that's kind of the reality of how those things work. So, I mean, you can give a pro gamer an average PC, and as long as they're able to like turn the settings to the lowest settings possible, lowest resolution, and crank it up, get that FPS up, I mean, that's literally all that's needed, right? You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, tuning memory for FPS, it's more of a hobby thing. You're doing it for the thrill of seeing the impact on the hardware. I mean, I guess it improves the FPS, but I personally don't think that makes much of a difference. In competitive esports titles, like, it's usually going to be the better team or the better player is just going to outplay the other one, assuming the hardware specs are relatively, I guess the FPS is relatively the same. Meaning, I don't think 500 FPS is going to be able to make somebody win over someone who's getting like 350 FPS, if that makes sense. It's going to be skill. Skill matters more than the hardware at that point. But yeah, I mean, we do these sort of things. We do tuning just because it's fun to do it, right? Like, why? Most gamers don't even overclock. Most gamers don't care. Like the comment earlier, some pro gamers don't even turn on XMP. Like, they don't even know what that is. They don't even care, So it's it is what it is. But most gamers are not hardware enthusiasts, and they don't care about overclocking because they're afraid like, oh, if I overclock my computer, it's gonna shorten the lifespan, it's gonna die on me, and it's unreliable, it's gonna cause the games to crash, So, stuff like that, because they don't understand how to test for a stable overclock. And most people that overclock, who think that they're stable, they live on a spectrum in terms of stability, and they might not actually be 100% stable. So everything that I do, so that's why I don't do a lot of overclocking content just willy-nilly, because what I show is 100% stable. I don't do things that do not work, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not going to show you guys, oh, look, I overclocked my CPU to 6 gigahertz. I'm not going to show that if I can't get it to be 100% stable, because to me, that's doing the community a disservice. So everything that I put out there is like legit, like this works. I'm using the computer. It's not crashing. I can literally game and live stream at 4K, 60, encoding 3 times, local record, full heavy bitrate push to the internet while the game is running all on one PC, all overclocked, 100% stable, no crashing. You guys know me. Those of you who watch the weekend live streams that we do, we can do like 5-hour gaming sessions and there's no crashing. There's nothing. Everything's 100% rock stable. So that's my method. So I'm not going to go for some crazy like number if I can't guarantee myself stability. Because how would I look if I'm live streaming and the game is like crashing randomly due to an unstable overclock? You know, that's not going to look professional. So, and that's why most pro gamers, they don't do that because they don't want to deal with testing stability, assuming they even know how to overclock.
Hey GTR, just bought a RTX 5080 Zotac Solid Core OC and
You
loving
got
it.
the Zotac Solid?
NVIDIA GPU. I have only had AMD GPUs since my first
You have
build
only
in
had AMD
2022.
GPUs since the first build in 2022? Well, I mean, that's only like, what, almost 4 years? About 4 years? So you were, I'm guessing you either didn't play games before or you played on console or you used a pre-build previously before you built your first PC. I'm surprised you built your first PC in 2022. That's not that long ago. 2022 was like Zen 4 and 13th gen. Now, granted, they were both Q4. Well, one of them was like the very end of Q3, but they were both like late 2022. But 2022 was like the first year that DDR5 started to be affordable, kind of, because it was totally not affordable in 2021. But yeah, appreciate the super chat though. You were only on consoles before? Okay. Yeah, I never abandoned consoles. See, I'm the type of person, like, I don't care if it's PC or console. Like, I never understood the whole console versus PC thing. Like, that never really applied to me. I felt like if I wanted to play a game, if a game is good, and if it's exclusive to a platform, and if I really, really want to play the game, I'll do what I can to play the game on that platform. Like, the best example I can give you is Demon's Souls Remake on PS5 or Bloodborne on PS4 back when it first came out. So, like, if the game is good, and if it's like Death Stranding 2, like Death Stranding 2 recently is available on PC now. Am I gonna play it on PC? Probably, eventually, maybe on a Steam sale or something. But I have no desire to replay through Death Stranding 2 just because it's on PC now. Because I already played it last year on the PS5 Pro. And it ran amazing, and Decima Engine's amazing on console. So it's like, you know, I'm not going to wait around. I have a feeling when GTA 6 comes out, most people are going to play it on Play. I mean, there'll be a chunk of people that'll wait for the PC release, but there's probably going to be a ton of people that play it on PlayStation when it launches later this year, assuming it's still going to launch later this year. I mean, I have all of the, I mean, you guys have seen my setup, right? Like, we've done a video, and the members have seen a behind-the-scenes video that shows all the consoles and how they're all hooked up to my computer. So I literally have everything all combined into one giant setup. So, like, if I want to play a game on PC, I play it on the PC. If I have to run it on the console, I'll run it on the console. That's what a capture card's for. So to me, it's weird because it's like it feels like regardless of what platform the game is being rendered on, I'm still playing it on the same monitor. I'm still playing it in the same chair. Like, if that makes sense. Like, it's so. And the thing is, what a lot of people don't know, well, I think quite a few people probably assume or know this. A lot of game reviewers So reviewers from like normal media outlets like IGN, GameSpot, Game Informer, like all the big publications that get review copies of games ahead of time. If it's a console like Death Stranding 2, best example, and Ghost of Yotei, Death Stranding 2 and Ghost of Yotei, how do you think reviewers like that were reviewing the game played the game? They played it on a setup where it's basically the PC, but the console's attached to it on the desk with a capture card attached to it. That's how I play all my console games. And I've operated this way since like 2014. Like it's been more than 10 years since I've played console games as though they were PC games, just like with a computer monitor, and you literally just have the console connected to the PC. So it's kind of like it's fused with the PC. So it's like instead of opening up Steam, I just open up, Rec Central or something and full screen my capture output, and there you go, PlayStation dashboard, and there you're in, so your desk, you couldn't do a setup like that as your desk, as my desk has enough, okay. Well, you can always, well, I don't know, is your computer, if your desk, okay, people who have like space issues on their desk, I hope your computer is on the floor. Because if you're complaining about not enough space on the desk, your computer tower better be on the floor. Because to me, that's an excuse. Because my computer's on the floor. All my computers are on the floor. None of my computers that I've ever built go on a desk. They all go on the floor. That's where they belong. Unless you have like a dog that's real fidgety and like goes up the RGB or I don't know, like pets could be a problem, but I've never had that problem, fortunately. But I know someone who has a dog, and the dog, like a young dog, will just freak out if the computer's on the floor and all the cables are hanging out the back with the RGB going, and they fire up a game, and the coil whine causes the pet to go crazy. You know what I'm saying? Oh my God. I mean, you guys have seen my setup, right? Like, I got triple monitors. First of all, I got triple monitors on the desk. And then I've got the consoles. So literally over here to the right of me, behind my right monitor, I have a PS3 Slim, a launch PS5, and a Nintendo Wii. Literally 3 consoles right there on the desk, right there, all right next to each other, all vertically mounted. Then I've got over here, so what do we got? We got a Wii Wiimote here just hanging out. We got the Xbox Series X controller. We have a PS5 DualSense controller. And I've got and on this side, so to the left of me, behind the left monitor, I have my Strix Halo mini PC on the desk. So, okay, a mini PC's on the desk, but that's vertically mounted just like the consoles. And right next to that is the Xbox 360S. So pretty much that's it. 3 consoles over there. We got a mini PC and another console over there. And then way over there on the other side, over there, I got the Xbox Series X and the PS5 Pro. So I literally got all the consoles. I got PS3, 360, Wii, PS5, PS5 Pro. I don't know why both of them are here, but we got PS5 and PS5 Pro and Xbox Series X. So the only consoles that I don't have on here are like PS2, Xbox Original, and then the Gen 8 console. So like PS4, PS4 Pro, the Wii U, the Switch is somewhere. I don't even use the Switch anymore because I use the Switch 2 now. But yeah. Dust on the floor. That's what your dust filter on the front intake of your case is for. That's another reason why I don't believe in aquarium computer towers. I go basic front to back airflow, front intake, rear exhaust, and the top is where the radiator goes. If you're doing an AIO, it always goes on the top, and exhaust out the top. Get all that hot air out of the system. Building computers like this has never let me down. I don't have to worry about temperature. I don't have to worry about overheating. I don't have to worry about dust. The other thing, too, you guys need to remember, when the computer is on the floor, remember the law of thermodynamics. The laws of thermodynamics. If you have a desk, like let's say this is my desk. So we got like, this is a desk. Okay? The computer tower is literally right here. This is where my computer tower goes. Literally, that's the computer tower. So the lower you are to the ground, the colder the air. The ambient air is colder at the floor. So you have a temperature gradient down here. How do I want to illustrate this? We have colder air at the bottom. Let's put it over here. Colder air. As you go up, the temperature of the air will rise. This is the basic laws of thermal dynamics. Temperature rises the higher up it is. So by putting the computer on the floor, it always has the lowest ambient temperature in the room. Because that's how thermodynamics work. Heat rises and colder air settles. If that makes sense. So it's basic stuff, man. Like putting the computer on the floor is the most practical thing to do. Especially if you have a full tower case. A full tower case. Why do you think they put all the buttons on the top of the case? For most of these cases, the buttons are at the top. They're at the top because you're just going to press down from above the case. You know what I'm saying? This is my standard setup for basically all of my, like how I've always used computers. Like Threadripper is on the floor like this. Out of all my computers, Threadripper is the only one that is on a non-carpeted floor. Godlike, Crosshair, Nova, all of those computers are on carpeted floors. Yes, carpeted floors. Yes. This is the other reason why I don't like to install power supplies with the fan facing down. So if I'm building a computer, my preferred method, so if this is the computer case, and let's say the motherboard is here, like the motherboard's like here, I prefer to put the power supply with the fan at the top. So I want the fan up here so that it can pull. So if I've got intake, if I've got fans here with air coming in like this, air flows in this way from the front, the power supply will pull in air from the intake fans and it'll exhaust it out the back. Hot air exhausting out the back or through the top. This is typically how I build my PCs. I don't like putting the power supply fan on the bottom of, like facing downward, because I'm thinking like, okay, what if the user is going to throw their PC on a carpeted floor? Like how I have, like most of my PCs have always been on carpeted floors. No, I don't have a standing desk. I kind of need to get one though. You're not the first person to mention standing desk. I know a lot of people that have recommended that I get a standing desk. But you know what? I know someone that has a standing desk and his computer is on the floor. and it still works. Like there's no issue with cables. So you can make it work. And if I was going to get a standing desk, my computer is staying on the floor. Standing Tech Thursdays would be wild. Oh no, like that one time when Steve from Hardware Unboxed was standing up the whole time. I forgot what was the reason why he didn't sit down, but he was like standing for so many episodes or something. If you got a standing desk, you would just reach really high the time. A standing desk makes you feel like a DJ? What? There was a video that I saw last year. I think it was somebody in Japan. Somebody in Japan did a very thorough like look at aquarium cases versus your standard front to back airflow cases, like traditional style. And they did find that I'm trying to remember what the conclusion was. There was like there was an area where I can't remember if it was like this part of the motherboard. There was a part where the aquarium case was bad, is what I remember. And I was as I was watching that, I was like, yeah, the Japanese gamer is literally proving to me that I'm correct. In that aquarium cases are not that great. They're okay. I mean, the average temperature difference, I think, was like 3 degrees Celsius. But there was a notable dead spot in aquarium cases. I don't know if it was on this part of the motherboard or if it was like this part of the power supply. There was something that I remembered in that video that proved to me that I was correct in my belief that aquarium cases are terrible in terms of airflow, and they'll never match a standard front-to-back airflow design from a practical standpoint. And also, like, the big difference is that for an aquarium case to get equivalent airflow to a standard, well-optimized traditional case, you need to use way more fans. Way more fans, which means way more vibration and noise. And also, even with all those extra fans, there's still turbulence in certain parts. There's pockets of air that kind of get like caught and they don't circulate enough, and they tend to heat up when the computer's under load. So there's things about aquarium that just, like, when I think about it, I'm thinking like, this is not practical at all. It looks cool, I guess. I mean, personally, I don't find them that cool looking, but they're just, I don't know. They just don't seem practical. To me, they're like a trend that'll eventually just die out. Because I think about the real world, how you have like a server. You have a server rack in a data center. And I can tell you right now, like data center servers, they're not going to be doing aquarium style airflow. Because it's terrible. It's so impractical and it's wasteful. So it's like you want front to back airflow or back to front airflow, depending on how they have their cooling in the HVAC system, really. But I just think of a server. Servers are always like, horizontal airflow is king. Like, there's none of this nonsense with like, oh, you're gonna suck in air from the bottom of the case, and I'm thinking like, how practical is that if you're gonna put that case on a carpeted floor? You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know. You don't want to see the inside of a rack chassis? Yeah, the next time I get a case, it'll probably be a case that's compatible with BTF motherboards. I can see myself doing a BTF build at some point in the future, but I will never use an aquarium case. It's got to be a standard traditional that supports back to front motherboards. But yeah, that's probably going to be my next case. A traditional style case that can support, You know, there's some interesting ones that Silverstone makes that look more like server rack type cases. And the cool thing about some of those professional workstations from Lenovo and Dell is those guys, the tower, like if you buy a ThinkStation from Lenovo, like the tower that they send you, you could mount it in a rack horizontally. Like you could literally turn it on its side and mount it in a rack. In a server rack. I kind of like the pre-built workstation computers, though. Like, I like the design of them. You know, like, this thing. This is the type of computer case that I like. This appeals to me. Like, not an aquarium. You know, you can mount it in a server rack. It has the potential for optical drive support. It has the big open grill in the front. You can see all that mesh grill, the honeycomb grill in there for that intake airflow. So I like this. Like if I was ever going to buy a pre-build, it would have to be something like this. Like this is the only type of case that's a pre-build form factor that appeals to me. Otherwise, I gotta build my own. You know, but like this looks cool because this looks professional. This looks upscale. This looks sophisticated. It doesn't look like some kind of blingy Ricer mobile gamer. Hey, look at me, I'm a gamer. No, it's none of that. No, I don't want any of that stuff. I want something that looks like this. Like, and that's the reason why I have the Asus. So the case that I have right now is the Asus ProArt PA6, what is it? 602, I think. It looks kind of like this. It has a glass window, so you can see your computer. You can see all your RGB inside. But it's, you know, it's this rectangle, the typical tower look. It's a full tower case, like this. So you can't rack mount the Asus though. But you know, whatever. I'm not gonna put it in a rack anytime soon. So. This is the sort of thing that I would get, though. Did we talk about this article? Max soon. Intel Arc Pro B60 dual. This is a dual, not a single. This is two chips. Two chips on the GPU board. So this is literally like a what do they call it? A not two-way SLI. It's a dual. Because I know four-way and then quad SLI. I forget what they call it, but anyway, it's like multi GPU without two physical graphics cards. It's one graphics card with two GPUs on the circuit board. So you have each of them have 24 gigabytes of VRAM per chip. So that's a total of 48 gigabytes. So pretty interesting GPU. We haven't seen one of these in a long time from either AMD or Nvidia. The last time I saw something like this was the Radeon Pro Duo. You know, it was Radeon Pro Duo 2016. Yeah, this thing. This is a dual GPU. You can see on the back. It has two chips. Literally two GPUs soldered on the same PCB. The Radeon Pro Duo, released in 2016, April 2016. This GPU is almost 10 years old. This was literally dual Fury X. Or what was the chip called? Fiji? No, was it Fiji? Whatever it was definitely not Vega. It was the one before. It was the last time AMD went toe-to-toe with NVIDIA's best. Whatever the Radeon Fury X was the GPU that rivaled the GTX 980 Ti. This GPU was like a dual version of that Radeon Fury X. You can see it's using a full, like it's all liquid cooled in there. So what was the power consumption on this thing? Like only 350 watts? 350 watt TDP for a dual GPU? That's pretty good. For some reason I was under the impression that it would be more than that. Because it has triple 8-pins. You can see it's got 3 8-pins on there. So, so the fact that Intel made one of these, we haven't seen one of these in nearly a decade, is pretty interesting. The only problem, oh, you can see it's using, there it is, the dreaded 12-volt high-power connector. They're doing the same thing that AMD did with AMD's Pro card. AMD started using that dreaded power connector. Intel's following suit, also using that power connector. So using the 12-volt high power. The card has a TDP of 400 watts. 400 watts. Wait, hold on a second. Wait. This is air-cooled? Wait, what? I'm scared. 400 watts? On a dual chip. Last time we saw this, AMD did a 350 watt and it was liquid cooled. 350 watt liquid cooled. Intel's doing a 400 watt air cooled on a blower style with a 12 volt high power. Oh man, this is gonna be loud. This is gonna be really, really loud. I'm talking like 4,000 plus RPM fan speed minimum. For under medium load. Dude, 400 watts on a blower style. That's scary. That is legit scary. But it says, hold on. Oh no, that's the single. Where's the see, this is not actually, this is interesting, but this is not this type of car that I'm not interested in. I'm more interested in the B70. To be honest, over this B60 or B60 dual. That power consumption's scary though. They're using that 12 volt high power on a blower style, double slot with 2 chips, 400 watt TDP. Now, granted, pretty much unless you're using AI, it's never gonna pull 400 watts. Because if you try to fire up a game with the dual Intel GPU, the second chip is not going to do anything. It's just going to sit there and just do nothing, basically. So it's only going to be like 200 watts.
I have the Be Quiet light base 600 case and 10 120mm fans in total with the AIO and barely hear them unless they ramp up, and that only happens at startup. Fans are the Thermalright TLK12W. Temps very low.
So, the Be Quiet Light Base 600. You barely hear the fans. Well, yeah, most of the time you're never going to hear the fans on a proper, like an optimized airflow case. You know, it doesn't, yeah. The Thermalright. Thermalright, they're the company that makes those really affordable air coolers. Is that right? I've heard of that company, Thermalright. They're the ones that do the air cooler, the CPU air coolers that look similar to the Noctua without costing nearly as much as a Noctua. If I remember correctly, that's thermal right. Barely hear the fans unless they ramp up. What type of AIO do you use? Most of the time, I hear the AIO in my computer. Like right now, when you mentioned the AIO, I immediately start listening to my own computer, and really the only thing I can hear is the AIO. I mean, I can, if I really, really try to listen for it, I can hear the fans. They're not loud, but I have to like listen to them and pay attention to them. But I can hear the AIO over the fans. Yeah, I have everything plugged into the motherboard. All my fans, all my fans in the case, they plug into the mother. Okay, if they're plugging into a fan header, the fan header plugs into the motherboard. So the motherboard controls the fan speed on my case. So, and that includes the two big giant intake fans, the 200 millimeters at the front. So, you know, I fire up a game and the computer doesn't get like super loud because the fans are so large. But if I listen for it, I can hear it when a game is loading up. But it's not like it's loud. You know what I'm saying? It's not like it's obnoxiously loud. It's not going to stay loud when I'm playing a game over like the GPU fans, for example. You just ordered Lian Li. Okay, so like, yeah, I have a Lian Li. I've got a really old Lian Li case from many years. Well, not many years ago. Probably like 7 years ago, 7 or 8 years ago. It's a small case. It can fit. It's a weird case because it can fit an ATX motherboard while being a small form factor case. And the crazy thing about that Lian Li is it's one of those stealth sleeper type cases where no one knows it's a gamer PC inside because there's no side windows or anything. But the dimensions of it are really strange in the sense that the case is, let's say the case is like this big. Like this is the case, the Lian Li case that I'm talking about, that I've had for like 8 years. There's no side window. It's all aluminum. It's a lightweight aluminum. And the motherboard is literally this big. The motherboard is literally that big. So if you put a full ATX motherboard in this case, like the motherboard goes all the way to the top of the case and the bottom of the case. So the power supply actually goes in. I think it's like here. Yeah, the power supply is there. It's either here or it's like in the middle. I think it's here. The power supply goes there. So it's a really interesting case, but it does not have good airflow. So I would only use it with like a mid-range, like a, you know, like I would not put a GPU that's more wattage than like 200 watts or so TDP on a GPU. So like 150 watt to 200 watts is like kind of the maximum I would do on this type of case because it's a small form factor. And I'm trying to remember the air. Yeah, the airflow is also reversed. So the fans actually blow the air this way. The air goes in, and then the hot air like literally exhausts through the. There's like one 120 millimeter fan here, and there's one 120 millimeter fan at the back. Like that's literally how that case works.
It's Thermalright Frozen Edge 360 AIO and my PC is in a monolith AV stand since my PC is connected to my OLED TV and 11.2 Emotiva sound system.
It's Thermalright. So you got a Thermalright AIO and you got the Thermalright. Okay. Huh. Monolith AV stand? Is it a monolith AV stand? since your PC is connected to the OLED TV. So you're basically, so are you using your PC in like a living room setup? Monolith AV stand? So you're basically using it like in a home theater? You have a, because you got sound system and everything. Huh, okay. Well, if you're using it in a living room, you don't have to worry about the room heating up because that's a. I would assume the living room is relatively always has a better ambient temperature than like a smaller room or a bedroom or something. So yeah. See, that's something that because I've got one of my PCs in the living room like that. Um, but I'm more like, because I have my computer in a room like this is just a regular bedroom. Yeah, I'm more concerned with the temperature in the room if I'm using a bunch of high wattage components because it's going to heat up the room. But yeah, if you're using that kind of setup, if in that kind of room, temperature, wattage, all that stuff is not as much of a concern compared to having it in a like a bedroom or something. That's interesting. The computer that I'm using in as the home as like the living room PC is the one that I built last year that I did live. You guys remember the PC that I built with the 9800X 3D? That's what I'm using as my home theater PC. It was the one with that NZXT case. And I remember building that case right after the whole story about NZXT and the leasing PC story broke. And I was like, oh man, I'm using an NZXT case when NZXT is like not popular right now because of the whole thing about them potentially screwing over gamers by having them lease a PC from them and never really with an option to own. I don't know if there was never an option to own the PC outright, but they certainly didn't make it an attractive option. They tried to get people into leasing a PC or renting a PC as opposed to like owning the PC. But yeah, that's the computer that I use. And in fact, it's funny you mentioned the living room PC. I was thinking of bringing that PC over here for this episode of Tech Thursdays to do like another overclock type, like a memory overclocking thing. Because you guys remember last year? I think it was last year. It was either last year or the year. Maybe it was the year before, man. I feel like, wow. It was either early last year or sometime in 2024. I remember doing an episode of Tech Thursdays where I tested a bunch of different memory configurations on a gigabyte motherboard. Do you guys remember that? Where I was doing like 192 gigabytes, 128, or what was it like? It was a bunch of different 4 sticks of DDR5 configurations. It was like Samsung plus Hynix, Micron plus Samsung, Hynix at 192 gigabytes. What do you need to run 192 gigabytes? Remember that live stream? I was thinking of doing that again or something similar, but I couldn't get the setup pulled apart in time to move it over here. So maybe I'll think about doing that next week. I wanted to do that, and then I lost track of time, and then the start time for this episode was like 10 minutes late, so I was like, we have to do it some other time. Because I wanted to bring that computer over here and basically do like another memory focused video or memory focused live stream because DDR5 prices. I heard DDR5 prices have kind of flatlined. That doesn't mean that they're affordable. It just means that they're not climbing up anymore, which is positive news. That's good news, but it's still not a good time to be buying memory, unfortunately. Maybe around the holiday season. I'm hoping that around the holiday season of this year, DDR5 pricing will have gone down by like 25 to 35% of what it is today. So it's still going to be way more expensive than it was a year ago. But I hope that things start trending in the right direction, because if we get Zen 6 or Intel's Nova Lake, although Intel has been talking about how they're resetting their roadmap recently, so I don't know what's going on there, but what that means. But if we get new CPUs, new generation CPUs from AMD or Intel this year, then I really, really hope for most people. Now, I don't have to worry about DDR5 because I technically have DDR5 already, like a bunch of DDR5. I mean, you guys can literally see, like, I've got a lot of DDR5. So I'm not hurting when it comes to DDR5. But my hope is that it'll go down so that if people want to upgrade, hopefully around the holiday season, the DDR5 prices will be more affordable than what they are right now. Because right now, yeah, it is hard to stay motivated to talk about this stuff when it always seems like it's negative news. Like every day you look at articles and people talking about, oh, now there's a helium shortage, and people were saying there was a copper shortage. Like back in January or February, I heard people talking about, oh, there's a copper shortage for semiconductors. Manufacturing is going to be all messed up and lead time is going to go bad again, and it sounded like 2021 all over again, even though we're kind of living in a repeat of 2021 to an extent. So it's just we don't have lead time problems right now. We have memory supply problems right now. So it's a different kind of problem, but it still manifests as a similar vibe, if that makes sense, because 2021 did not feel like a good year to upgrade, especially GPU. I mean, I guess technically back in 2021, the motherboard, the CPUs, all that stuff was still very affordable, but the GPUs were totally not affordable. So now it's like, okay, GPUs are still relatively affordable, but memory is not affordable. SSDs are basically almost not affordable if you're used to paying prices that we paid for SSDs last year. Now, I haven't looked at SSDs in a while, but I can tell you 4 terabyte. So this is, I'll just give you guys some examples of like the price that I would pay for certain SSDs. 4 terabyte SSD should be like $200. 2 terabyte SSD should be like $100. So if you're having to pay more than $200 for a 4 terabyte, you're getting ripped off. If you're paying more than $100 for a 2 terabyte, you're getting ripped off. Now keep in mind, this is me not looking at what the actual SSD prices are right now. I'm telling you what I typically pay for SSDs a year ago. So if it's more than this, it's completely out of whack right now. So, and for reference, memory. So if you're wanting to buy, like if I'm gonna buy 96 gigabyte DDR5, I will pay $350. I will not pay more than $350. So, so this is why, yeah, memory is not affordable. 48 gigabytes of like DDR5, whatever, like $200. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I ain't paying more than $200 for 48 gigs. I ain't paying more than $350 for 96 gigs. So it's gonna be a long time before I look at DDR5 again, because those are the prices that I'm willing to pay. I'm not gonna pay more than that. So you guys can go and Google what these prices are right now for these type of products, and you can see how expensive they are, because I'm showing you guys the reference point. These are the reference points. If it's above these numbers, it's way up. Because these are what I paid. So anyway, I guess was there anything else I wanted to discuss on the computer hardware? We looked at that Intel GPU, which is kind of interesting. Arrow Lake. Oh, there was an Arrow Lake story. Was this last week? Did I not cover this? Did I not cover this? There was a. This is from last Thursday. I know I covered the review of the Core Ultra 7, but this article, Intel officially confirms Core Ultra 9 290K plus won't be released. So they've said Intel is excited to deliver exceptional value with our Intel Core Ultra 200S processor. The Intel Core 200 or the Intel Core Ultra 7 270K plus and Intel Core Ultra 5 250K plus are positioned to deliver. I like how it's literally the word plus, not the symbol, not the mathematical symbol plus, but no, the actual word plus. To deliver outstanding gaming performance and incredible value compared to our competition. Our objective was to... Why are they saying past tense? Past tense doesn't seem good. What about that? Our objective was to maximize performance for the desktop SKUs that are most widely available. As a result, Intel is not launching so U9 is how they say it. U9 290K plus. So there will be no Core Ultra 9. No Core Ultra 9. Refresh. Which is quite disappointing. Because I hope that they get that weird binary product update thing that Geekbench said is considered cheating and invalidated the benchmark results. I'm not sure why Geekbench did that, because Geekbench is like, well, you can't, like, oh man, did they have that story on here? That was the weirdest. I don't know. We're not gonna go there because it's all like people are like, oh, it's Geekbench is so pro Apple, like it's so sad, but yeah, Geekbench basically invalidated benchmark results of these Core Ultra 7 and Core Ultra 5 that were using that thing that Intel came out with to help vectorize the instructions or something. Like Geekbench considers it cheating, so they invalidated the results of anyone who ran the benchmark on these processors. I don't know, man, because it's like, even I looked at those results and I'm like, Apple's still beating them. So why are these guys complaining? It's not like Intel's all automatically faster than Apple, you know, in Geekbench. So it's like, why do these guys care? But I don't know, man. It's kind of weird. So I don't know. They're going for the value. They're going for the value. And around the price points, so $200, $300. These are good price points. These are really good price points for these chips. For the amount of cores that you're getting. Now, you're not getting any hyper-threading. There's no hyper-threading. So they're kind of kneecapped in that regard. You know, I've explained the concept of hyper-threading in SMT. It's basically you have a CPU core and has a left hand and a right hand. If you don't have hyper-threading, you only have one hand. You don't have the other hand. So it's almost like Intel basically took Core Ultra and literally mutilated the left hand off of every single Core Ultra chip, so they literally only have one hand, so they can only pick up like one thing at a time. They can't do like the old Intel Core Ultra or the Intel Core i9, like the 13 and 14 900K. They could do like dual. You know what I'm saying? On the P cores, on the P core specifically, the E cores were always one instruction, or they were single threaded, but the Core Ultra P cores are all single threaded. So they chopped off all their left hands. It's like, why do you guys do that? And the funny thing is, the CEO of Intel literally said in an interview late last year or earlier this year, when asked what about hyperthreading, and he was like, yeah, that probably wasn't the best decision we made, and we might consider bringing it back in the future. So yeah, maybe we'll see hyperthreading come back because I kind of feel like if Intel still had hyperthreading, Core Ultra without hyperthreading, the multi-thread is quite impressive for what it is. It's capable of beating the Raptor Lake 14900K in multi-thread benchmarks without hyperthreading. So think about that. That's pretty impressive, and it's capable of going toe to toe with AMD's Zen 5 that has 32 threads. So keep that in mind. The Intel Core Ultra without hyperthreading, so they technically have a thread deficit against AMD. They can go toe to toe with an AMD CPU that is all P cores, less total cores. We're talking 16 cores max versus 24 core max on an Intel, but Intel doesn't get hyperthreading. AMD has that, I want to say hyperthreading, but it's basically hyperthreading, but it's SMT, simultaneous multi-threading, which basically, to use a Dragon Ball Z analogy, it's literally like AMD has split form technique from the Saiyan saga. So literally all the cores on the AMD can go split form, and all of a sudden there's like duplicates of them everywhere, whereas the Core Ultra can't do that. So at all, like not even the P cores can do that anymore. So yeah, Lip Bhutan was saying, you know, maybe we will probably bring it back in the future because it was probably not a good move to take it away. The reason why they took away hyperthreading, for those that don't know, is because of all the security vulnerabilities that kept plaguing Intel CPUs for the past 8 years now. If you guys remember Spectre and Meltdown and all the variants of those things were exploits in the way Intel CPUs were doing predictive instruction handling, and they're like guessing where, like how to do something before it actually happens. And Spectre and Meltdown basically exploited that weakness. And Intel would have to do a firmware update, BIOS updates on all the motherboards every single time to patch these vulnerabilities out, and that would always nerf performance slightly. And it got to the point where it was just like way too overwhelming, I guess, for them to deal with. So they're like, you know what? If we throw away hyperthreading, we don't have to address a lot of these vulnerabilities because a huge chunk of them are dependent on hyperthreading, because hyperthreading literally duplicates the amount of times your processor can potentially like do a guess and see if it's right or wrong, and the exploit leverages that. So if you take away hyperthreading, all of a sudden like you cut that in half essentially. So at least in theory that was the idea. So that was one of the main reasons why they took away hyperthreading. The marketing guys said, "Oh, we don't need it anymore. Our CPU is so powerful, it doesn't need it anymore." You know, like it's like okay, 24 cores versus like your old Intel Raptor Lake, which was 24 core, 32 thread. This new guy is 24 core, 24 thread. You know, like which one sounds more impressive, at least the number wise. So I don't know. It's interesting. I'm someone who has always kind of liked the Core Ultras. I know a lot of gamers don't like these CPUs. And I question whether or not someone would even use these for really anything over an AM5 platform, because it's not like AMD CPUs are bad at productivity. AMD CPUs are just as good at productivity, and AMD CPUs are better at cryptography. So if CPU mining was ever a thing again, the AMD Ryzens are going to outperform these like instantly. And the other thing too that makes me wonder about the viability of this long term. First of all, there's no upgrade path. So if you get an Ultra 7, you're basically, that's it. You're not going to upgrade. No Nova Lake for you. You know what I'm saying? So now without doing a whole new build, new motherboard, everything, reactivate Windows, blah, blah, blah. You know, jump through all those hoops. The thing about the AM5 option, which makes it seem way more superior, is socket upgradability, AVX 512 instruction set, which is really good for certain applications, productivity apps that actually use that, and you have more options. You have X3D options if you're into gaming. You have non-X3D options if you literally don't care about gaming. And what they found is that X3D also benefits productivity. That's the main reason why AMD is releasing that 9950 X3D 2 later this month, which we will probably be taking a look at because that seems like it'll be an interesting chip to overclock. Now, I might actually revisit Intel Core Ultra though. I was thinking of switching my daily driver computer back to Intel Core Ultra. So, I mean, I got this guy over here, Core Ultra. See if it's really good. I mean, I think it's okay. There's really nothing wrong with it. It just doesn't chart top consistently. That's its biggest problem. But you know, the average PC enjoyer, in a side-by-side comparison, you put an AMD Ryzen Zen 5 base, Ryzen 9000, whatever, and you put one of these Intel Core Ultras next to it. In a blind comparison, no FPS charts, just look at what you see and what do you think. The average person's not going to be able to tell the difference. They're so similar at the end of the day. And that, to me, signifies that we are more at the limits of silicon technology. Like, node shrinks are getting harder and harder to do, so you can't automatically get a huge performance uplift anymore, which means regardless of CPU designer, CPU vendor, the engineers, whatever, like, at a certain point, both AMD and Intel will flatline. They'll both become so equal to each other in performance, in single thread performance, in multi-thread performance. I mean, they're both using x86 instruction sets, so you can't really compare them to ARM. You can't really compare them to Apple, which is also ARM. So they are their own thing, and eventually they're going to perform virtually identically, and at that point it'll turn into the value proposition, the platform capabilities, the things that I have always talked about that a lot of other tech enthusiasts don't openly talk about. You know, like things like, okay, does it have USB 4 version 2 support? Can it support QDIMM or CAM2? Can it do, you know, like what's the hardware virtualization capable? What's the instruction sets? Does it do AVX 512, for example? Like, those are the sort of things that I think AMD and Intel are going to compete against each other on more and more in terms of trying to win the audience, because eventually Intel's gaming performance will catch up to AMD's multi-thread, or wherever the deficits are between AMD and Intel, they're going to flatline, they're going to even out, and at that point, you're going to be buying based off of price or brand loyalty or functionality, like actual features. And that's kind of where we're headed with CPUs. I mean, it's kind of how I see the industry at large. I don't know. You guys tell me if you disagree. What do you think is going to happen to CPUs in the next 5 to 10 years? You think we're still going to get like AMD doing X3D and it's like the best for gaming since sliced bread, and Intel's real good value, or Intel's good in like servers or whatever, and AMD's over here doing like handhelds? Like, what do you guys think is going to happen in the future with CPUs? Because CPUs are not often talked about. Everyone wants to look at GPUs. Everyone wants to focus on like Crimson Desert with DLSS or AMD's full FSR Redstone implementation or whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, not a lot of people look and think about the CPU aspect these days. But CPU and memory are super, super important if you want to do stuff like virtualization. Like, if you want to virtualize some kind of other appliance, like a router, for example. You want to run a router in a VM. You want to simulate or emulate multiple routers just because you can. Like, you're going to need a lot of memory. You're going to need a lot of CPU cores to do that with decent performance levels. You know, VMware, VirtualBox, All these things. These are the sort of applications. The fact that VirtualBox is so good on AMD Ryzen right now is probably because of some kind of AVX 512 acceleration that it's doing, or I don't know what it's doing, but it's some magic stuff where it's like 50% or better on an AMD compared to an Intel, and I don't know what happened. I guess Intel doesn't have AVX 512 or something. I don't know what the reason is, but in terms of virtualization, AMD is like so good on VirtualBox, and I really don't understand why, except assuming that it's something to do with AVX 512.
What do you think of Nvidia getting into the desktop CPU space with ARM CPU?
That's an interesting question. I personally don't know what Nvidia's goal is when it comes to consumer hardware that's outside of GPUs. Because to me, they don't seem to have a good, like, they don't have a strong strategy that I think would appeal to the end users when it comes to utilizing a CPU, an ARM based CPU. Because it's no different from what we saw with the Snapdragon laptops back in 2024. If you remember, Microsoft and Snapdragon teamed up. They made a big splash at Computex in the summer of 2024. You had all these journalists saying this marks the beginning of the end for x86 and blah 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 and all that stuff. And then fast forward, by the end of that year, Intel launched Lunar Lake. It was a little bit late to the party, but it still was good. If you wanted a thin and light with good battery life, and it's x86. And AMD basically hard countered Snapdragon with Strix Point. It basically like slapped Snapdragon across the face. It's like, sit down, man. x86 is where it's at. Like Strix Point, summer 2024, man. That was like the best thing I've ever seen from a mobile platform back in that year. Although Snapdragon was intriguing. It was intriguing. Now, I don't know if NVIDIA's CPU strategy has any significant amount of weight in terms of how they're going to prioritize their go-to-market strategy, other than to say, like, okay, let's just throw our CPU in with GeForce. Like, let's just offer, because one thing that NVIDIA can do differently than Snapdragon is they can leverage their GeForce discrete laptop GPUs. That is something that Snapdragon couldn't do. So NVIDIA can be like, hey, we have an ARM CPU. The battery life is so good. Look at how good it is. It can be like an Apple M series with all-day battery life. But guess what? You get GeForce Now. GeForce Now. Okay, yeah, you can get GeForce GPU, but realistically, if we're emulating Windows on ARM, the gaming performance, even with a GeForce, is not going to be that good compared to x86. So like an NVIDIA CPU plus NVIDIA GPU in a laptop is probably still going to lose to an Intel or an AMD CPU plus an NVIDIA GPU in a laptop, if that makes sense. So I don't know what their strategy is going to be, like in terms of how they're going to sell this thing to consumers, because ARM is kind of really bad with Windows. Let's just put it that way. There needs to be a lot of software programming effort on Windows to make ARM much more viable for the average consumer, not just the average gamer who games on a laptop. I don't know how many gamers game on a laptop, but there's probably a good chunk of them that do. And how are you going to convince a gamer to buy a NVIDIA gaming laptop that has an ARM-based CPU that forces them to run ARM or Windows on ARM, which is all kind of like having to emulate a whole bunch of apps, and emulating apps kills battery life. And yeah, I don't know. So it's a great question. But I just don't really know what NVIDIA's long-term strategy is with that. It's like, you know, the desktop thing, I mean, is that more of like an AI box like DGX Spark? It's gonna be like DGX Medium or something. I don't know what they're gonna do, man, with the ARM CPUs. To me, it doesn't make any sense. It honestly doesn't. It's cool. It's interesting they're doing it, but it's like I don't know what they're gonna. What's the benefit? Like, is this gonna be some revolutionary thing? Because we've seen this story before. I literally said it, like Snapdragon. Oh, it's gonna have great battery life, like Apple. What was the reality? It had okay battery life. It had good battery life if you were using it for like email and YouTube. But the moment you start using an ARM-based laptop to do actual things on the laptop, like you want to play a game or you want to like download Steam and like download Steam games, yeah, there goes your battery life because it's having to emulate and all the cores are maxed 100%, you know? It's just burning through the battery. There goes the battery. So you lose the efficiency benefit. You have all kinds of applications that just don't even work. They just don't even start. Or they're broken or they have bugs. So if NVIDIA is going to launch ARM-based CPUs, somebody, whether it's NVIDIA or Microsoft, or maybe it's going to be AI, which will vibe code all the things necessary to make it equivalent to an x86 experience on Windows. And I don't know if I see that happening anytime soon. They're probably going to push it all to AI and have AI vibe code like 60 to 70% of the code for Microsoft Windows on ARM. Either Microsoft is going to do it or NVIDIA is going to do it, or both of them are going to kind of work on it. They're like, hey, we're going to work on it. And when they say we're going to work on it, they literally just mean have AI vibe code the whole thing in the background and just hope that it works. And then just have some intern somewhere like proofread it or whatever. And it's not going to be some regular intern. They're going to get some guy from like Stanford or whatever who's his senior year, or he's doing his master's, or he's doing his thesis or whatever. And he's like, yeah, let me check your vibe code. And he's like, you know, he's interested in it for the first like 40 minutes. He's like going hardcore. Yeah, this is good. This is bad. Redo this, that, this. And then like 2 hours later, or like the French guy says 4 hours later, and then it's like he's falling asleep, and then the vibe code is just all broken at that point. So I don't know, man. I don't know how it's gonna go down, but it's like I don't think it's gonna be a home run success. Let's put it that way. NVIDIA doesn't have the best track record in the consumer space since they've moved over to vibe coding for a consumer. Like, you guys remember when 50 series launched last year? How many driver problems GeForce had? Like, I remember black triangles in Monster Hunter Wilds on the 5090. Actually, no, it was before I had the 5090. The 4090. I was using 4090 to play Monster Hunter Wilds, and the driver from like January or February of last year was causing black triangles. It literally looked like I had defective VRAM on that GPU, on that Founders Edition. And I knew it wasn't faulty RAM because the old driver worked, the new driver broke everything. So somebody got vibe coding in on that, and it screwed everything. They done gone messed it up. You know what I'm saying? So pretty bad stuff, man. Wilds ran poorly at release, but it didn't have graphical issues until those NVIDIA GeForce drivers came out and screwed everything up. Wilds actually runs good now. Wilds runs really good now. It's not even really an issue anymore in terms of performance. Like, Capcom fixed the issues with the performance, with the CPU bind that kept on happening. They cleaned a lot of it up. So it is not even a problem anymore. But yeah, all throughout last year, it was a problem for people. So basically, if you wanted to play Monster Hunter Wilds, you either had to have the highest end hardware imaginable, like what I was showcasing the game on, or you had to have at least DDR5. If you didn't have DDR5, you were on the struggle bus. It doesn't even matter what GPU you had. You could have a 5090, and if you're on DDR4, you're getting terrible latency and frame drops. Or not frame drops, just terrible latency and like frame dips because of that DDR4 bandwidth bottleneck on that CPU. Doesn't even matter what the CPU was. Okay, there was one exception. 5800X3D and 5700X. If you had X3D on AM4, it could mask a lot of the issues, but you could still get it to manifest the drops by going out into the open world during a lightning storm and going to hunt Radau, and then you hit a CPU bottleneck when he literally flies away, and you could see it happen. You know, like even on an X3D. That's because it's on DDR4. You go to DDR5 with 7800X3D or anything better, smooth sailing. But we're talking like the highest of the highest end stuff. We're talking like DDR5 8000 with the lowest latency, with all the tuning, X3D, you know, like the highest, most powerful GPU you have that can handle the settings. That's the only way to make it like really good. So trust me, like I know, we did a lot of content on this, and so I know exactly what the issues were. It was all CPU bottlenecks because of the way Capcom had implemented the data streaming, the compressions and decompression. They were constantly decompressing the textures for the world on the CPU. On the CPU. It didn't matter if you had a 5090. No one cares if you have a 5090 if you're playing Monster Hunter Wilds back in the day when literally the CPU was doing all the heavy lifting. So once they fixed that, once they switched over to Direct Storage 2.0 or 3.0 or whatever it is, using the GPU to do everything, problem solved. And then they fixed that one issue where it kept on checking for the DLC and all that stuff. Yeah, they fixed that also. So now it's smooth sailing. But yeah, if you didn't have the most powerful CPU with super high-end DDR5, we're talking like either super tuned DDR5 6000 or DDR5 8000, you were on the struggle bus for that game. You could even 6 gigahertz overclock at 14900K and it's still going to run like garbage if that 14900K was paired up with DDR4 memory. Because I saw like a 20% difference in performance on an Intel going from same CPU, DDR4 to DDR5. 20% uplift in Monster Hunter Wilds at launch just from the memory type. So that game was so memory bound because it was using the CPU to decompress everything constantly. You literally pull up your SSD and you look up Task Manager, the whole time running the game, SSD was just doing read, write, read, decompress, read constantly. The PS6 will be at best on par with RX 9070. You know, that's actually an interesting statement. I have not looked into PS6 in a while, but we can already estimate the performance. So, hold on, let me do something here. So, RX 6700. This is PS5, right? This is PS5. Let me go up 40% or so. Yeah. RX 6800 is about the performance of the PS5 Pro. So that's about 45% faster than a base PS5. So if we look at... So, okay. We want to target... Actually, hold on. I should be looking at this differently. RX... No. RX 470. This is PS4 Pro. PS4 Pro. So we want to go look at the PS5. PS5 is about 7,600. Because I know the 6,700 is not going to show up on here. So the 7,600. So right around here. 155% faster than a PS4 Pro. So PS5 is so much faster than a PS4 Pro. So I gotta think about this, because how am I gonna estimate, like, so that's 150%. I'm just gonna say 150%. So now we go to PS5. This is PS5, base PS5. We're gonna go 150%. Where do we land? We land around somewhere between a 6800 XT. Oh, that doesn't make sense, because that's too close to the... That's too close to PS5 Pro, so it would have to go more than that. Unless Mark Cerny is targeting another 45 to 50%. So if we go to, let's see. Hold on, because the... Wait a minute. Maybe that works out, because this is 40%. I want to go to 100 and... Oh, no, I want to go 250. That's what I should be looking at. Okay, I got it. Okay, so it should be around here. The PS6 should be somewhere around here. I think. So yeah, it could be an RX. Realistically, it's not going to be like these guys, because these guys are like super high power consumption. So I would guess somewhere around 4070 Ti Super or 9070. So yeah, I think you're right. The PS6 should be around an RX 9070. That makes the most sense, actually. That seems accurate to me. In terms of the uplift. I'm thinking 150% uplift is kind of Mark Cerny's internal benchmark target. Well, actually, hold on. That's less, though. Hold on. It'd be 150. I gotta go 150. So it would be around... It would be around the XT, actually. It would actually be more like this guy, PS6. Right? Oh, but no, remember, you have to remember the console has a more strict power limit. So yeah, I kind of think it is going to be like 9070. 9070 seems to be the 9070 XT, somewhere around there. Somewhere between those two, maybe closer to 9070. That seems to be about right. That's kind of what I would expect. But see, this is the reason why everyone's saying that PS6 is going to be super expensive. I mean, how much does this GPU cost? Okay, let's assume it's 9070 level. Where is that? Right here. That's only like 10% difference. So, okay, we'll just... Worst case scenario, 9070. Okay, so 9070. How much does this GPU cost? $550. $550 just for the GPU. Just for the GPU alone, $550. So this is the reason why everyone's like, oh, the PS6 is going to be like $1,000. Because the console, not only does it have the GPU, it has the CPU section, although it's probably going to be like an APU. It has to have the ports for the controller. It has to have the Bluetooth module. It has to have the Wi-Fi. It has to have the Ethernet. It has to have all these other things in addition to just having the graphics component. This is the reason why people keep saying, oh, PS6 is going to be like $1,000, because this thing alone is already $550 MSRP. The MSRP of this graphics card is already more in line with the MSRP of a PlayStation 5. And the PlayStation 5 is a fully complete console, ready to go. You don't have to buy a case. You don't have to buy RAM. You don't have to buy a CPU or all these other things, power supply, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to buy any of that stuff just to play the games. So yeah, it's, I wouldn't be surprised. I think they'll subsidize it to like $800, $799. I have a feeling Sony's gonna try to do a $799 option, and they'll do it somehow by one of them will have like a much smaller SSD or whatever it ends up doing, but they're not gonna do like one SKU and then like that's the one SKU, because you know Sony always does two SKUs. Remember PS3? PS3 had 20 gigabyte and 60 gigabyte at launch. The PS4 was special because PS4 only did have one, although I think they had like a 1 terabyte and a 500 terabyte or something, or a 1 terabyte and a 500 gigabyte. They had like different options for storage. That's what I remember. I don't know if it was at launch though. But then PS5 had the disc, the Blu-ray disc PS5, and it had the digital only PS5, and the price difference was $100. And you go look at PS3's launch. PS3, the price difference between the 20 and the 60 was $100. So Sony will do something similar to make it look like, oh, you know, there's two different options. There's the premier one or the premium one that's probably going to be closer to $1,000. They might subsidize it to like $949 or $899. And then there'll probably be like a $799 option that has like half the storage or whatever it may be. So they'll do something like that to make it. They'll basically put noise into the marketing so that people are not like, oh, it's so expensive, because they'll be like, okay, there's this one price and then there's this lower price. So I'm pretty sure they'll do something like that. I would be very surprised if they don't do that, because typically that's what they've always done to soften the price points. Because whenever there's a console launch, I don't know about you guys, but when I buy a console at launch, I always get the better one. Like if I'm doing, if I was gonna go and get PS3 at launch, I'm gonna get the 60 gigabyte PS3. I'm not gonna buy the 20 gigabyte PS3. And if I'm buying the PS5, and I bought the PS5 at launch, and which one did I get? I got the $500 one on launch day with the Blu-ray drive. And I've used the Blu-ray drive probably like 2 or 3 times. So, but I still have it because it's one of those things. It's better to have something and not to need to use it than to need something and not have it when you need it. They need to become like into PCs with upgradable parts. I don't know. I don't know about that. Because a lot of people, so like a lot of enthusiasts really, they really paint AM4 in a very positive light, because AM4 gave them so much longevity in terms of upgrade cycles while keeping the same motherboard. But what they don't tell people, what's not said about doing that, is that you think that there's no incentive to buy a newer motherboard. How does AMD and their partners, the motherboard guys, how do they incentivize someone to get a newer motherboard? If all you got to do is buy the CPU, update the BIOS, and then throw in the CPU and you're upgraded. You know what I'm saying? Like, how do they do it? How do they get you to upgrade to a newer motherboard? Why did I buy an X870E Godlike when I already had an X670E Aorus Master. What's the reason to buy the newer motherboard? Assuming I didn't need to. Like, I could just throw the new CPU in the old motherboard. It'll work. It's features. It's features. It's things that the newer motherboard enable the user to do that the older motherboard cannot do. That's the difference. It's the platform upgrade. So the nice thing about AM4, and AM5 has stayed true to this as well, is they give you the socket, they maintain socket backwards compatibility while also providing newer, updated features on the newer chipset to incentivize new upgraders to choose the newer motherboard over the older motherboards. That is the reason why the argument in favor of AM4 and AM5 is slightly weakened, because if someone's going to do an upgrade, regardless, there is a reason to consider the newer motherboards. This is obviously true for someone who is upgrading regardless of the socket and they have to go to the new socket. Like if they're on AM3 or AM4 and they want to go to a DDR5 modern platform with PCI Gen 5 capability, they have to do a new motherboard upgrade. They have to change sockets. This is the reason why Intel has never really cared too much about socket longevity, because they understand that with the new socket, you can deliver a newer platform with newer features. Now, AMD has proven that you can still do that while also maintaining socket backwards compatibility. So for people who don't care about these new features, like if you don't care about USB 4, if you don't care about, like in the case of Asus, for example, the newer motherboards from Asus have the Q, what do they call it? The Q latch for a quick disconnect GPU. The older ones have the button. Although Asus is bringing back the button because the newer one had a problem. But that's besides the point. Newer features from Asus. Nitro Path is a new feature available on the newer chipset motherboards that was not available on the older motherboards that are still all AM5 motherboards. So these are the sort of things. These are the reasons why Intel doesn't care or see the need to prolong a socket, because it's like, well, if you're gonna upgrade and you're gonna have to buy into the new platform regardless, because your PC you're on is so old, you have to upgrade. The only situation where it backfires for that mentality is if the user already has that socket. Like if you're already on AM5. So for example, if you're on, well, okay, I'll use AM4 as an example because AM4 is such a well-documented example of this. We need to bring back paint. Everybody's favorite thing, paint. I'm going to probably clear this whole thing off, actually. Let me clear most of this off. I guess we'll leave this. Well, no, let's get rid of all this stuff. We'll just clean the whole thing. Oh, I can't clean the whole thing. All right, well, whatever. We'll just leave it like this. So I started in 2017. In 2017, I got Ryzen 7 1800X and X370. Gaming titanium. X370 gaming titanium. X-Power gaming titanium. X-Power. With people who have been building computers for years, you guys know exactly what brand motherboard this is without me even telling you. With a name like that. Okay, so this was my computer in 2017. So, in 2020, so this is literally 3 years later. Think about that. 3 years later. More than 3 years later. It was like 3.5 years later. Because this, let's say this is March 2027. And now, November. Pandemic year. Pandemic. This is literally 3.5 years later. What do? Ryzen 7 5800X. 3 years is the difference between a CPU being in its prime and middle-aged. 3 years. That's all it takes. That's how fast technology changes. So at 3 years, this is a middle-aged CPU. It's no longer the latest and greatest. It's way past its prime at 3 years. So I went 3.5 years, CPU upgrade. BIOS update, everything works. So that is a really good example of how AM5, how socket longevity is very useful. Because what is the equivalent Intel in this scenario? What is the equivalent Intel scenario? If I went with Intel at the time that I got the Ryzen first generation, I would have had to get the i7 7700K quad core 8 thread with Z270. This is the rival at the time that AMD launched Ryzen. This had launched back in January of 2017. Kaby Lake, 7th gen. A refresh of Skylake, 6th generation. So, if I went with this instead of this, and if I upgraded in November of 2020, what would I be able to do with that motherboard, with Z270? Would I be able to throw a i9 10900K in that motherboard? Or even a i7 10700K? This CPU existed at that time. That was the latest from Intel. Could I put that in a Z270 with a BIOS update? Will it work? You're a little bit off there, Mark. i7 8700K was late 2017, not 2018. You're thinking of the i9, the first i9, the 9900K. So I wouldn't be able to do anything. So if I was going to go Intel, I would have had to buy the CPU and a Z490 or Z5. Wait, is that right? No. Z490. Z490. Z590 was 2021. Z490 motherboard. So I would literally have to spend on a new motherboard if I was on the Intel. So basically, it's a cost savings thing. It is definitely a cost savings thing to be on a platform that has longer upgrade cycles. And the crazy thing is, this example that I'm giving you guys is the most extreme example, because this was the first and this was the last. Keep that in mind. It started with Zen 1. AM4 ended with Zen 3. Or maybe Zen 3 Plus, if you include the APUs. Like the 5700G. Actually, no, I think that's still Zen 3. So never mind. So this is why there is still a very positive aspect to socket longevity, because it can result in a lot of cost savings. Now, so let's do a different discussion here. So if I went with, X370 versus X570. X370, 2017. X570, 2019. Or actually, if we're gonna do this differently, let's do it a little bit different. X370 versus X570S, the last of AM4 motherboards, the final level. The S stands for silent. No more active fan on the chipset. So this, 2017. The S, 2020. X370 was meant for Zen 1. It launched with Zen 1. X570S, a refined version of X570, was meant for Zen 3. So we went from Zen 1 to Zen 3. Now, in that time, AMD had Zen 1, Zen 1 Plus, they called it Zen Plus. Well, we'll just say Zen 1 Plus. Zen 2, Zen 3. So there's literally like 4 different things, 4 different product lines. You had the Ryzen 1000 series, Ryzen 2000 series, which was Zen Plus. You had Ryzen 3000 series and Ryzen 5000 series. Ryzen 5000 series was fantastic. Clearly the best CPU launch and CPU generation in possibly AMD's entire corporate history. That is how monumentally good Ryzen 5000 was. Ryzen 5000 was the magical CPU. This was the first time, the underdog, the first time in history that maybe not the first time in history, because AMD, we're not going to talk about early 2000s. AMD was probably in its prime in the early 2000s. But Ryzen 5000 Zen 3 was the magical renaissance moment, whatever you want to call it, where all of a sudden the little guy became the big guy. They literally managed to finally beat Intel in every objective metric measurable. Faster in gaming, faster in multi-thread, faster in single thread, basically faster in everything. Better energy efficiency than Intel. They used less electricity, generated less heat, won all the benchmarks in multi-thread, because Intel had a 10-core 20-thread, AMD had a 16-core 32-thread at the high end, so it's like no contest. So, that is why Zen 3 is a big deal. And then to follow up, they launched the world's first X3D CPU, which was Zen 3 based. The Ryzen 7 5800 X3D in 2022. 2022, like a year and a half after Zen 3 launched, it continued beyond. That's what it means to go beyond. They went way beyond the lifespan of AM4 and still launched another CPU, and then eventually followed that up with like a 5700, like a lower bin X3D and all this stuff. And all of a sudden, the fabric of reality for all the people who played Star Citizen was just lit up in bliss, because finally there was a CPU that could run Star Citizen at 60 FPS. This was the first one to do it consistently, averaging above 60 FPS in Star Citizen. And those of you that are familiar with Star Citizen, you know how CPU demanding that game was back in the day. And it still might be. But X3D solved the problem of Star Citizen through brute force capabilities of the X3D cache. It's like overnight, everyone playing MMOs were pushing they were pushing like X3D, man. Like I had people like messaging me, man, what about that? Where can I get that X3D? Newegg sold out. Where can I get the X3D? Amazon sold out. I'm like, dude, do you live near a Micro Center? It's so easy to get. Just go to Micro Center if you live near one. Or if it's like an hour away, just go get one from Micro Center. I had like 7 people messaging me daily at least, asking me where to get the 5800 X3D for Star Citizen, or like some other MMO, like some Korean MMO, like Terra or Arcade or whatever, you know, because it's like, man, this thing is like so good. So this is the reason why, this is what caused AMD to start gaining true market share and like digging inroads into Intel's market share in the gamers demographic. It was all Zen 3, man. It started with Zen 2 because a lot of people bought Zen 2. Zen 2 was where they kind of they basically kind of tied Intel. Intel would win some, AMD would kind of tie and sometimes win some. But during this time, the i9 9900K was still very strong against the Ryzen 3000. It wasn't until Zen 3, man. Zen 3 just basically overtook. It overtook like the dark horse in a race to the finish line. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was one of those type of things. So but anyway, I don't even know how we got into talking about this. Oh, we're talking about socket longevity and all that stuff. Yeah. So, socket longevity. There's an example right there. There's an example right there. If you were on, like, Ryzen from, like, 2017, 2018, you could literally upgrade to the best CPU on the planet 5 years later. And not have to change anything else. 5 years later, half a decade later. That's more than an entire presidential cycle. That's crazy. I mean, think about that for a second. That's kind of crazy to put things into perspective like that with using time. Alright guys, well I think that pretty much sums up. I don't know how we started talking about socket longevity. I really don't know how we got into this topic. We're talking about motherboards? Oh, yeah, I was talking about like how do companies entice you to buy the newer motherboard if they're going to do stuff like this? It's all feature based. Anyway, hopefully you guys found that somewhat interesting. This episode of Tech Thursdays was like all over the place. It was mostly memory, and then at the end it became CPU focused. But yeah, memory focused. So now you guys know how to tell if a memory kit is SK Hynix or not. At least with a good 80% accuracy, 80-85% accuracy, I'll say. There's those rare kits that don't follow the rule that are also SK Hynix, but those are very rare from my experience. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in. If you're new to the channel, we do these kind of long-form discussions every Thursdays, hence the name Tech Thursdays. And if you guys are interested in watching the weekend live streams that I sometimes do, not always, but sometimes I do them. At least I try to do one on a weekend. It's more of a gaming-focused live stream. do check out the weekend live streams. And to get notified when I go live, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It does help me out. And hit the bell icon so you know when I go live. Because sometimes I go live in the middle of the day. Sometimes I go live in the evening. Sometimes we might do a PC build. Live stream PC build. If you don't want to miss that, then definitely hit the bell icon so you get notified. I don't like to nag people on those things, but that's kind of like my one... This is my one opportunity to try to like promote the channel. So anyway, guys, thanks for tuning in as always, and I will see you guys next week. Until then, take care and see you then. Thanks.